everyone, welcome to my tutorial. I am Aryan and in this tutorial we are going to build a magical 8 ball of developer excuses using ReactJS and GSAM. So this was originally a project for one of my CodePen challenges. Here it is. What it basically does is I can click on this ball here and the page animates to give me a developer excuse which I can use to get out of my work. So I don't need to do my developer work again. So let me start by showing you this new tutorial pane of ReplIt. It's a really cool feature. It gives you the text here. These are all the instructions in text with different sections. You can jump to the table of contents to select one. Welcome to this tutorial, and by the time I am done filming this, we'll also have a video that you can play around with. Okay, now one more important thing that I wanted to tell you is after every section I have this link for code for this section. You can click on it and it takes you to a GitHub repo and to the commit for that section. So it says create basic ball component, and it's the same thing here. So I have this for all of the sections. So let's start off with our code now. We are going to start by creating our ball component. It's a very simple component to start off. We'll start off by creating a ball.jsx file. I'll just add a file ball.jsx, and inside that I'll create a basic React component. So I'll write import React from the React package, and then I'll create a functional component const ball equals like that, and I'll export this, export default ball. Now inside this, for now I'll just return a div that has a class name of ball. We'll use this later on for styling and all. And then I'll create a paragraph that just says some random excuse for now. Now in our app.jsx, let me import the ball component, import ball from /ball, and I can render this. I'll create a div first, div, and I'll give this the class name of app, like that. And now let me just render my ball component. So I can run this up. Repl will automatically run it for me in the console, and it opens web view. I'll open this in a new tab. So it says some random excuse. Okay, let me close this web view down. We don't need it. So I have the shell and console here, and I have my output here. But what we actually need to do is we need to pass in a prop from our app to the ball which has the excuse. So we'll just pass in a prop excuse equals, and let's do something else. Let's do random excuse number 1. Okay, like that. And from here I can get the excuse and render it here, like that. And it says random excuse number 1. So that's our basic ball component. Very simple right now. Let's move on to getting random excuse. We have a package that we need to install. It's called excuses, and we can just simply jump into our REPL shell here, and we can type in npm install excuses. It's an npm package excuses, like that, and it will automatically do that for us. Now I can import this package in my app.jsx file, import excuses from excuses, like that. And now let me create a function called get excuse. I'll create an arrow function, and to get a random excuse, it's very simple. Excuses.developers.getRandom, like that. and that should give us a random excuse. Now I'll also set up a React state here. So I'll import React and the use state hook from React. And what I'll do is I'll set up some state const excuse and set excuse. And here in my use state, I can pass in the function random excuse. So when this line of code runs, it sets excuse to a random excuse that it gets from the API. I'll pass in this excuse variable and let's see. Yes, so we have a random excuse. I'll reload the page and it gives us another random excuse. Nice. We want this when we click on the ball. So let me set up another function that says handle ball click and another arrow function. In this function, I'll just set my excuse to a new random excuse. So very simple stuff. And I'll pass this function to as a prop handle ball click. I'll give it the key of handle click and I'll pass in the function to my ball component. And here I can get the function handle click. I'll add an event listener here on click. I just want to do handle click. Oh, I have spelled it wrong here. I'll correct that up and let's see now. If I click on it, it gives us another random excuse. And I can keep doing that. Okay, that looks good. And that's what we'll do in this section. Moving on to the next one. So this next section is about styling our app component a bit. I'll keep the tutorial pane open for this one so that I can copy up some CSS here. It gets long sometimes and you can do that too. I'll explain everything as we go. We'll start by adding of some additional text here in our app. We'll do two H2s. The first one is magical ball. That's above the ball, and the second one is of excuses. That's on bottom. And now another paragraph. This will be absolutely positioned. I'll just copy this text here. Okay, let's see what it gives us. Okay, nice. Magic ball, then this is the excuse of excuses and a paragraph. Now let's import the already given app.css file in our app.jsx file. So it's import dot slash app.css. Okay, and we just need to add this bit of CSS to start off. Let me paste this in. So what this does is it imports two fonts from Google Fonts. Montserrat, it's this font, it's a very popular font, and then Montserrat will be used as a main font, and Smokem, this is this font, this will basically be used for this 8 here, nothing else. Okay, so we have added the fonts there here, and we are also removing the margin from all of the elements. So this is what we get. The font has changed to Montserrat. Now we have our app component with the class of .app. Let's give it a width of 100%, a height of 100 VH, the full viewport, overflow of hidden, and then this background color. I'll copy the hex code. Let's do it like this. And so our background color changes. It's tough to see the other stuff here, the width and height. Now we need to give our H2s a class of app-heading. So I'm going to select both of those using the option or the alt key. And I'm going to give them a class name of app-heading, like that. Now let's give them some styling. I want to increase their font size to 2.5 rems, their font weight to 600. Text transform is uppercase, meaning that all the letters should be in uppercase. Then I'm going to increase the word spacing for this. This will look a little weird right now, but this is basically for when we add the curved text and some letter spacing. So it looks too far apart right now, but it will look good when we add the curved text. Now I have made the app component a flex box for the alignment. So I'll just give it display flex and flex direction column. I'll do align items center, which means horizontally in this case, and justify content center, so right in the middle of the page, and we have it there. I can still click on this to get new excuses. Now we need to add a class to the paragraph here. I'll do app dash description. Okay, and I'll give them some styles too. The first style I'll give it is color. I've copied this hex code, it's a pinkish color. I'll increase the font size a little bit. Just remove this. I'll also make the font weight 400 and line height should be 2 rems, just to make it a little more spaced out. Max width should be 300 pixels so that we can like break the lines there. It shouldn't all come in one line. Let's see how it looks. Okay, it looks nice. We just want it here on the side, so I'm going to remove it from the normal flow of the document. I'm going to do position absolute, and then I'm going to set its bottom to be 25%, which means 25% from this end, and also left to be 10%. So 10% from the left edge, and we have it there. Let's move on to creating our curved text component. So first of all, let's install a curved text package. I'll clear this up. It's just npm install arc text. That. Okay, done. Now I'll create a new file here. It says curved text.jsx. Inside that file, let me start by importing arc text from arc-text. Create a basic React component. And I'll export it. Okay. Now inside this, let me return for now h2. I'll give it a class name of app dash heading, and I'll take in a prop that says text. I'll display it here like that. Now let me import this component in my app.jsx file. Okay, and I can replace these two h2s, do curved text, and I'll pass in the prop text as magical ball. The same thing I can do here for this h2. I'll just change the text to off excuses. Let's check it out. So it's the exact same thing right now. Now what I'll do is I'll use my package here. So now I'll pass in a ref attribute, and inside that I'll put in an arrow function, pass in the ref as an argument. Ref means the reference to this particular element, the app heading. Let me create my arrow function here. Inside that I'll define an arc text variable as a new instance of the arc text, and I'll pass in my ref here. Now what I can do is I can write arc, I'll specify the radius, arc text dot arc is 250, and let's see, and we have it. That looks good. Now there is one issue that we are having here. We want this second h2 to be curved downwards. So to do that, it's very simple using this package. You can just set arc text dot direction to be -1, and that works. That gives us a downward curve. So we want this to be a dynamic value. I'll accept a dir prop here. I'll just display it here. So if the dir is -1, then it should be a downward curve, else it should be an upward curve. And here in my second curve text, I can just give it a dir equals -1, like that. And we have one h2 that's curved upwards, one that's curved downwards. Now what I'll do is I'll just add some CSS to make each of these separately colored like this. So in my app.css file, first of all I'll just select my second app heading and give it the color of white, like that. And yes, that's good, because see, the second one, it doesn't have any black here, it just has whites, and this one has blacks, no whites. Now to give each of these a separate color, what I've done is I've selected each span individually. So the package creates spans for each letter. I selected each of them individually using the nth of time and given them a separate color. Now I've put in the code here in the tutorial screen for you to copy. See, this is all of the code for that. You don't need to type this from scratch. So app heading, nth of type, let's start with 1, and inside that I want the first span, so I'll do the green color right now. And similarly I'll select the 6th span, and I select the 9th span. So this is the 6th span, this is the B is the 9th span, and we don't need anything from the second heading. You can just give all of them this color. And yes, so they are not visible because the background is also green. If I select it, now you can see that it's still there. Now we'll do the orange color. Okay, so I have given it the colors. This looks a little awkward because you can't see some of the text, otherwise it's looking good. So everything looks good here with our curved text, but there is a slight problem. If I click to generate a new excuse, the app crashes. We are getting an error here. So if I show you the console, we are getting an error. So what actually happens is, when I click on the text, the app component re-renders as there is a state change, and that causes an error in this arc text package, so it's unable to get the ref. So what I can do is I can import a hook called memo from the React package. Import a React memo from React. And what memo will do is, if I pass my component through the memo hook, it will only re-render this component if there is a change in the props. If the props are the same, there will be no re-render. So let's try now. Let me click to generate a new excuse, and it successfully does that. Okay, so that was it for our curve text component. Next up, we are going to style our ball. So I'll start off by creating a new file. It says ball.css, and in my ball.jsx file I'll import this. I'll import it here. Now also I'll add a h1 here with the number 8. It gives us the 8 too. Now what I'll do is, in my ball.css file, I'll keep this tutorials pane open again. First we'll style the ball. I'll give it a specific height and a specific width, 300 pixels both. And I'll specify its border radius to be 50 rem. We've not given it a background color, so we can't see it. I'll actually give it a linear gradient, and let's see now. So the gradient is to get this whitish color here and this orangish color here down, so it looks more realistic. Now I'll also make this a flex box. Okay, so the text is centered. Let's also give it a padding top of 35 pixels, that this comes down, and it has come down. The only problem is that our ball is changing its shape. So to prevent that, what I can do is I can just give it box sizing border box, so it will include the 35 pixels in the height, and that looks good. Now I'll also change the cursor to pointer and set overflow to hidden. Okay, so the cursor has changed, and the text that was going outside here, that's not visible. Now let's style the h1. So I can just use a descendant selector like this, and first of all we need to specify the font family. It's Smokum. Set up a backup family as cursor. I'll increase the font size quite a lot by 4.5 rems. Also give it a border radius of 50 rems and a background color, it's the pinkish background color. I'll make its color white. Let's see it. Okay, it's fine. We just need to add a bit of padding. We'll do 5 pixels for top and bottom, 35 pixels for right and left. Okay, that looks good. The 8 looks good. Now let's add a bit of styling to the paragraph here. So again, I'll set up a height of 500 pixels, width of 400 pixels, and a border radius of 50 rems. Again, I'll do a gradient that gives me a bluish color along with the black. Okay, so I have the background color here, and I'll also give it this pinkish color, the same thing. I'll copy the color like that. Okay, so we have the color too. It's really big right now. This is because we only want this excuse to be shown when the ball becomes bigger. See, notice it here. So we only want it to be displayed at that time. So that's why the styling is for something bigger. I'll increase the font size too, and I'll give it some padding. So 50 pixels right and left, 0 pixels top and bottom. So now it's become huge. Now I'll give it text align of center. I'll make it a flex box, and I'll just center it completely using justify content center and align items center. Okay, that should be good. That should be good now. What I'll also do is I'll give it a transform translate y, which means I'm moving this to 300 pixels. A positive number means downwards, so it has gone down now. So when I animate, it will look like the quote comes up and this number goes even further up. And I'll also give it a display of none. Okay, so we have our 8 in the center. It looks pretty good now. To start off with our GSAP animations. So we are on to the cool part here and also the final bit. So I'll start with importing the package in my shell. I'll do in npm install GSAP. And I'll import GSAP in my app.jsx file. So right now I've put in my GSAP in the app.jsx file. In the next section we'll move it to its own new file. And let's create a new GSAP timeline when we click on the ball. So I can just add in some stuff to the handle ball click function. Okay, like const timeline equals gsap.timeline, like that. So that won't do anything for us right now. What I can then do is I can do timeline.to and just put in a normal CSS selector here. I'll select the ball and I want it to move up, so I can specify the y attribute to be -100. Then let's get it to move down. So .to, I can chain on these .to's, .ball and y 100. Let's see now. So when I click, the ball moves up and down. So now let's add in a shake animation instead of this. What I'll do is I'll change the x, which means right and left, first to 40. Then I'll do -40. Then I'll do 30 and so on. Okay, so let's check it out. And we have a shake animation here. Okay, so now let's add in another timeline. I'll call this background timeline. This is to remove all of the background elements from the page, the h2s and this paragraph. So we'll start off not by adding animations, we'll start off by creating some background figures like this pink background and these two semicircles. I'll create a div with the class name app.bg. And now let's go to the CSS. I'll do .appbg. I'll make it an absolutely positioned element. Specify top to be 0, width to be 100% and height to be 50%. I'll also give it a background color. I'll do the pink one, this one. So this is basically this part, the pink part here at the top, and we have the pink part. Now I'll add in the two semicircles. So these are just after and before elements for our app.bg. So I'll do after, leave the content blank, and I'll put in position absolute. So I want bottom to be 0, left to be 50%, and I'll translate x them to minus 50%. I also need to give it a width, let's do 50%, and height, let's do 80%. So this after element is the inner circle. I want its background to be white. So background color FFF, that should give us white. Okay, so we'll add in the border radius, do 50 rem. 50 rem means 50 rem from both sides on the top, and 0 0 from both corners at the bottom. It should be 0. Let's see. Okay, so we have our curve here, a semicircle. Now let's add in a before element to the app bg. I'll copy this for once, change its background to the orange one, and I'll make its width 70%, height 110%. I'll change this to before. So we have our second semicircle. Let me just increase this height to 90%. Yeah, so I think that looks better. And this to 120%. Yeah, that looks better. Now what I need to do is I need to make the ball and the headings come forward. So for that, first let's give the app headings position of relative and z index of 2. Okay, so we can see our heading, it's looking good now. And to our ball, I'll give it position absolute because we want to animate it and make it come forward. And again I'll do z index, let's do 3. So now our flex box is a bit spoiled here because I made the ball absolutely positioned. So what I can do is here in my app.css, instead of justify content center, we justify content space around, and that looks good again. So also let's add in a css variable here to an app.bg, 2 actually. So these two variables will be used to animate these two semicircles. So I'll, instead of setting bottom to a hard code value, I'll set it to --o, o for orange, and this one to --wh for white. So no change right now. Now let's just organize the code a bit. Now let's go on to our animations for this part. So I'll go to my app.jsx file, and if we see the animation here, some elements move up and the others move down. So instead of making our code redundant and specifying up and down to each element, what I can do is I can give elements that need to go up the class of animate-up, and elements that need to go down the class of animate-down. So this p definitely needs to go down, so I'll give it a class of animate-down. Now for the curved text, I already have the direction of bend, so based on that I can say whether they want to go up or down. So I'll add a string template literal here using my double text, and using the JavaScript tertiary operator I can check if dir double equals -1, That means it's a downward curve, it's the second one. Then I'll add in the class of animate down. Otherwise, I'll add in the class of animate dash up. So this is an inline way of checking stuff. Okay, so let me now inspect these and see what classes they have. So the first H2, this one at the top, it has a class of animate up. The second one has a class of animate dash down. That's what we want. Let's add our code for the timeline. Let's add our animations. So background timeline dot to. I'll start with the animate down stuff, and I want them to move down, so I'll specify y to be, let's say, 500. Let's check it out. Okay, so they go down, but notice that both of them go down together. If I show it to you again, see, they go down together. I don't want that. I want them to go down one by one. So GSAP has a very cool property called stagger, and that means, and a comma here, there will be a 0.15 second gap between the animation between the two elements. So let's see it now. Okay, looks good. Now let's do dot to dot animate dash up. We'll give it a y of minus 500 to go to the top. Let's check it out. Nice. Now what I can also do is I can specify another value for background timeline. I can write equal to minus, and let's do 0.3. So this will just start the upwards animation before this has completely finished, before moving down has completely finished. Okay, so that's quicker, and that's nice. Now let's animate the CSS variables. So for that, I think, yeah, we need the percentage signs here. Earlier I had not put them in and there was an error coming in, so you need the percentages here. Now here what I can do is I can select dot app dash bg, and then I can select the CSS variable. GSAP makes it very easy. Just in double quotes you write dash dash o, which is the name of the variable, and let's make it 200%. It should also disappear. Let's check it out. Cool, the orange one is gone, and let's do the same thing with the white one. I'll just copy and paste this, and I'll change dash dash o to dash dash wh. Okay, nice. Now I can again make this a little bit quicker by doing the same thing, 0.3, and that's nice. I also want the ball to be quicker, the shake animation on the ball to be quicker. So for that, here where I define the timeline, I can set a property called defaults in curly braces, and then another object. Inside that I can specify duration to be, say, 0.2 seconds. So this will be applied to all of the timeline, to each tweet. You don't need to specify it and all. Yeah, that seems good. Let's also move the app background to the top. So dot to dot app dash bg. I'll give it a y of minus 500. Let's check it out now. Okay, nice. One final thing, we want some text to come in here. So if you can see this text, this paragraph, we want that to come in once we click on the ball. So for that, I'll just create a paragraph with the class of open text. I'll do app dash open text just to stay consistent. And here I'll write, here is your developer excuse, like that. Now I'll add in a bit of styling. I'll jump to, okay, I'm back. So I have this selected here and I've given it a color. It's a pinkish color. See, it's like that. It's a light pinkish color. I've increased the font size a bit. I've made the text centered. Then I've made it position absolute to remove it from the normal flow of the document. Made it 50 pixels from the top. Then I've used our trick here for centering this part. So left is 50% and translate x minus 50%. And then I've added a translate y to minus 200 pixels. That means it has gone to the top right now. It's not visible. Okay, so let's just animate this here. Chain in another dot to dot app dash open text. And I'll specify y to 0. Let's check it out now. Nice. Now there is this problem here. I can scroll down and see this. So what I can do is I can just in my app.css let me make my app position relative. So all the absolutely positioned elements are children of this and they are relative to this div. So that should fix it up for us. Now I can't scroll down. There is no text there because I have overflow hidden also. Now let's just create our final timeline. This is for the 8 ball to like go down, the text 8 to go up and the ball code to come down. So just one final timeline. It's pretty easy. First I was just thinking about this and playing around. I have changed this div. There was a p tag here. I've changed it to a div. I think in my ball.css I have done it too. So that's 2 changes I did. Let me just create a new timeline now. Ball timeline equals gsap.timeline. Done this twice already. This is the third time. Ball timeline.to. First I'll select the ball like that and I'll give it a height of 800 pixels and a width of 800 pixels. I forgot to put this in quotes. This is not valid JavaScript and a comma here, not a semicolon. Okay, let's see what happens. Oh, it becomes big. I need to move this down too, so only half of it is visible. So that's again simple y 200. Okay, we'll structure this out well so the animations run one by one. Now I want to animate the h1 here. So .to select the ball and then an h1 directly inside that using CSS descendant selector. Give it y of minus 500 and .to I'll do ball div. To that I'll set the opacity back to 1. I'll set the display back to flex. It's display none right now. And I'll do y to 0. Did I add semicolons? Keep doing this. Okay, let's see it now. Okay, looks good, not too bad. So our layout is a bit spoiled right now. This is in the side. So what I can do is I can give my h1 a display of none and that should fix it up well. Okay, that's good. It's glitching a bit right now. That's just because of REPL running slow. I've been running it for a very long time right now. But otherwise it's good. And the code is a little cluttered up here. So we'll move all of this into its own file in the next section. To move everything into its new file, I'll create a new file here. This is animations.js. And first of all, I definitely need gsap in here. I'll import gsap from the package gsap. Okay, now let's create three different functions, each of which returns a different timeline. So the first function, I'll just call it shake timeline. This will return our timeline that shakes the ball. Again, another arrow function. I'll create a timeline here, const tl equals gsap.timeline. This one, if you remember, it had defaults. I had set the duration to 0.2 seconds, like this, in another object, and I'll just return this timeline. Similarly, I'll create one for ball. It's a ball timeline, the one that moves the ball down and displays the code. Const tl equals gsap.timeline, and just return the timeline from the function. And one last one, const background timeline, bad spelling there, const tl equals gsap.timeline, return tl. Okay, now let's cut all the timelines from our app.jsx file and move them. So first I'll take the ball timeline, I'll cut it out, and here I'll just put it in my function, do tl.to, because that's the name of our timeline here. Let me cut this out to background timeline, and I'll paste it in its function. I'll change the name. Final timeline is this one. This is like the shake timeline. Cut this out, paste it here, and rename it. Now I can remove all three of these from here. I don't need any of it. And I can also remove gsap. We don't require gsap in this file anymore. Okay, so now let's create another function, an animate function. And in this we'll create a master timeline. So const master equals gsap.timeline, and then we'll use the .add method that gsap gives us to chain on the other three timelines. So master.add, first we need the background timeline, so we'll just call that function because it returns a timeline. Then we'll add another function that says shake timeline, that will add our shake animations, and finally the ball timeline. Let me first play this timeline. So I'll do master.restart. I'll not do play because we want to reverse the timeline, and then when we click on the ball it should start again right from the starting. So I'll just make it restart, and I'll export this function. So only this function, animate. I'll import it in my app.jsx. And I'll run it in our handleball click. Let's just do animate. So our app component gets much simpler. We only need one function. Let's see what it does now. Okay, so I ran into a couple of errors there. I missed this equal to sign, and I've spelled timeline wrong once again. Changes to shake timeline again. I was just trying to debug. Okay, let me run it now. Oh, looks good. Already looks, in my opinion, better than what we had before. Now let us just add a set timeout to reverse up this timeline. So I want to call it after 6000 milliseconds. So that means 6 seconds after our animation is done. What I'll do is I'll just do master.reverse. Very simple, just reversing the timeline. Oh, doesn't look bad. The only problem is we don't want the shake timeline again. So what we can do is we can like get the timeline we want to remove using GSAP. What I can do is I can set up a variable and I can do master.get children. This will get all the children. I want the first index, that means the second timeline, which is the shake timeline. I also need to pass in a variable called false, which means it should not necessarily be in the top level of the master timeline. And then I can just remove this using master.remove. I'll put this in master.remove, removed. Okay, let's see. And it reverses well. Now just a couple of things here and there that I wanted to add. So again, since this is going very slow, it's waiting for the ball to open up and only then is it going up. I'll again use that technique here. We'll do minus equals 0.5 seconds this time. And that should make it good. Yeah, much better. And now I'll just go into my index.html. I'll just change the title. Magical 8 ball developer excuses. Okay, so that's our project. We finally completed building it. Thank you for building this project with me. Hope you really enjoyed it. Please share your projects in the comments section and hope to see you again in the future.